We talk about mindset. We talk about how do we shift from certain things. What we're saying is, instead of in the morning thinking about, oh my God, how bad things are, you're saying, like, imagine you start off your day like this. It can't just be lip service. It can't just be you've sang the Guru's words. Yeah, the Guru's sang the greatness. Are you saying it? You've got to say it to get the fal, to get the fruits. You've got to feel that. Yeah. If you don't feel God being great, then you've not sang the greatness, the glory of that one. We're leaving people to say, no, koi nahi, like, but as long as you've said it, as long as you did your Gurbani, that's one step, yes. Then why are then people still sometimes feeling just dead? Are they still feeling so low? Because what was prescribed by the Guru, Amrit Vela Sach Naao Vichar, wasn't done. When you feel that about God in the morning, it's like, wow. When you're in that wow, then what happens? Welcome to the Japji Sahib Podcast. In this episode, Guru Nanak Dev Ji will be answering the question for us. What is it that we can give to God where we can then experience God's love? So let's look at the fourth stanza of Japji Sahib for this question to be answered for us. Welcoming Preacher Singh as well, that is joining us. So Preacher Singh, if we start from the first Pangti, where Guru Nanak Dev Ji is saying to us, Saachaa Saahib, Sach Naao, Akheh, apar. What we'll do is we'll go through some of the words and we'll do some of the literal translations for some of the words here first. And the first two words, Saachaa Sahib, that come together. And the Sahib literally translates to master, that, and referring again to that one, to that creator. And alongside that is the word Saachaa. So it's letting us know, again, reminding us in that very same way as it was in Mool Mantar when Guru Sahib Ji said to us, Sat Naam. Going back to reminding us that that one, that master, is the only true Saachaa, the only true thing that is the actual reality. And Saachaa Sahib, Sach Naao. And here, the word Naao, we're going to be translating to that one's divine will. Sometimes you'll see the word Naao translated to name as well. But here, what's being said is that Sach Naao, that the way this whole creation has been created and the way the actual law behind this creation is based on based on the truth as well. What that means is that you can't blag the system, basically. You can't escape what this is, the reality of how this has been created. Nobody can actually escape that. Just the way Guru Sahib Ji told us that hukam hai andar sab ko, bahar hukm na koe, that everybody is bound to that divine will. And in that same way here, that's what Sadhguru Ji is saying, that Sach Naao. That Sach Naao can also be looked at in this way, that that one that is the truth is the one that has created the divine laws. Akheh apar. If we just read out literally the way we have translated it here, that the limitless one, where do we get that word from, the limitless one? Is the word apar. Apar here is again a noun describing Vaheguru, being limitless. Par means where something has a limit and you can get to the other side of that thing. But apar means where something hasn't got that end and you can't get to the other side of it. So often the way we can look at that is when you've got the ocean in front of you, and then, but at times you can actually see where the shore is and where that ocean comes to an end. And then there's another side to that ocean where you can get to the other side of it. But here they're saying that there is no other side to get to. So, uda koi paar nahi hai, oh apar hai. The way that one expresses this Naao, this law of how this creation has been created, how has it been expressed, is, and how are we getting to the word express, is from the word Bhakya. Bhakya in this context can be translated to language. Bhakya can also be translated to speaking or language, very similar things. And also in other places, Bhakya can be translated to eating as well, what somebody eats. So, but in this context, Bhakya means language. And the language that one uses to express this divine law is Bao. Bao is love. And we know it's love when it's got a kanna. And when we take that kanna away, it's Bao. So it's actually got they've got a very close relationship. And so the journey, as we went through before, starts without the kanna, starts from Bao. And then you get to Bao. It starts from fear and it gets to love. So now, sometimes this can be difficult to comprehend, that in which way is it? Because when we look at this world, we can see many things that can seem to us that, well, where's that love gone? If this divine law has been expressed with love, then because of the certain things that happen in this world, then where is that love? I met somebody, I was shopping, somebody came running and she was very emotional and talking about that, oh, really wanted to meet Jagrad Singh, and that why did God take him away, and why do these things happen? Why do these things happen where good people are taken away? And then they kind of try and make sense of it within their own mind to say it was probably because of this, because God needed him here or there or wherever. You know, people like to do that. And that's not necessarily the truth, is it? That's not necessarily Saachaa, that how it's actually working. I don't think, well, let's be clear actually. God doesn't work like that, to think, you know what, you're better needed here and let me take you away from 3 children and it would make so much more sense for me to do it like this. So even though we come up with these stories in our own head, it doesn't make those stories true. And then she came up with and said that, then what about, you know, why do these things happen to good people? And I'm sure we've heard this so many of times that, and even that question, I often think that, where's that question come from? Like, who's actually sat there and done an actual study to look at, yeah, this happens more to good people than it does to bad people. Like, has somebody really gone out there and done a survey of the 7.8 billion people on this planet to think that, oh yeah, these type of things happen more to good people? Like, where do these galan come from? And then how many people start believing in them? Yeah, that's true. Bad things do happen to good people. Like, I don't know. Has that been something? Have you ever believed that saying? Has that ever been a thing for you? I don't know, Preacher.
Yeah, you hear it all the time.
You hear it all the time. Has it ever been a thought for you though?
People use it as a justification, to say like there's no justice, there's no kind of fairness in the world, and people lose faith because of it. Yeah, because of the suffering that they have.
And she did actually say that kind of, she was then reluctant or she was confused then whether to even continue on this path. Because if that can happen to somebody like Jagrad Singh, then again, it wasn't something I wasn't planning to go this direction, but it fits so perfectly, and you'll understand how now. When we try and understand God through that lens, through our own emotional lens, just because of our experience of what we label to be love isn't necessarily the love of God. And only when you have a glimpse and have an experience of that, one, do you understand how different it is to what we had deemed to be love? If you look at a lot of what we classify to be love for us, and if we was to have a sieve, and a lot out of that sieve, you'll actually find that what you'll have going through that sieve is a lot of attachment, a lot of our own expectations, lot of our own attachment to say this is mine and this should be this way. A lot of control will be in that as well. When you look at what we keep talking about, this love thing, there won't be a lot of it left. And I'm not there being negative. So let's try and understand what it means that God expresses hukam, this divine nai. Nai comes from, is also another way of looking at the word nai, from the word nya, means justice. So what is God's love then? How is God speaking that love? Again, we'll take the Sahara, we'll take the support always from Gurbani. Guru Amar Das Ji says to us, Ek nadar kar vekhe sab upar. Jeha pao teha phal paiye. And this is a pankti that I tend to use and go to many of times. This is actually gives us a glimpse of God's love. God's love is ek nadar, that looks upon all with one vision, because God hasn't got two visions, because then that wouldn't be God. God is just one. Ek nadar kar vekha sab upar, looks upon all equally. And depending on our devotion is how much we capture of that love, experience of that love. God's got one vision. So there's this divine law that is set out, and God isn't going to now differentiate between people because of a certain element of your guna. You've got some beautiful qualities about you. You do some amazing work for this world, but that doesn't mean if that within that divine law you've had a certain diet in your lifestyle contains a certain way of eating, diet, or because of a bacteria you might have picked up as a kid or something. Yeah. So if you picked up a bacteria as a child and that bacteria causes, for example, your stomach lining to erode, God's not going to sit there thinking, but you know what? You did amazing work. You helped so many people come off alcohol, drugs, and because then that wouldn't be God's love. God's love means that I'm going to be equal to everyone, because God isn't an active person in that way. God has just set out the laws, and like we went through previously, God is then detached from that. Naanak vigse ve paravahu, that God is carefree in that sense. God is vigse, constantly blossoming. Isn't emotionally attached and involved in what is folding out. That's what it means that God speaks in love. That then if it means that you've picked up a bacteria, I'm just using this one example, and just because you've helped 100,000 people in getting off drugs, alcohol, anxiety, you've helped these people through all of that, through introducing this way of life to them, Sikhi to them. But it doesn't mean that God is going to now say, well, I'm going to alter my Saachaa Saahib, Jaaneeai, Bakhya, Pao, Apar. Because that wouldn't then be Saachaa. And just looking at this now, it just shows how important it is to actually have explanations and katha, because then we can draw other parts of Gurbani to make sense of something. Saachaa means that I'm not going to alter this. Saach means that this is fixed. This is achal. This is just this is still. And then as that falls out, whether it be that whatever you've picked up, your stomach's been eroded, because that's what that bacteria does to you, it's irrelevant of the other actions. Are you getting the fala for those, fruits for those? Yes. But then are you getting the fruit for that? Yes. Even though you've not actively done it, but that's just the way that works. Hopefully that's making sense, because it's not necessarily the way we look at love, but that's what it means in this context. But how would we even be able to know that until we're trying to look at it, we're trying to understand it through our love? Because I'm thinking that, oh, look, I love my child and I don't want anything bad to come upon my child. So we're understanding it through that lens. We're thinking, I'm here bringing up my child, trying to give them the best food possible, to do the best for them. And so we're trying to understand it like that. Well, isn't God like that? In that way, trying to do the best for us. God has given us everything. In that way, we have to then try and tap into that hukam of what does work for this body and what doesn't work for this body. That's been left to us to understand that. So hopefully that we've got some context now. We can go to the next pankti from this point. Now Guru Sahib Ji saying, Akheh, Mangeh, Deh. So now bringing it to us. There's people like us, and so this is bringing it upon ourselves directly now. Akheh. Akheh literally translates to saying. Over here we can translate that to ask. And then Mangeh means to request. And koi cheez nu mangna. Then what is that Mangeh saying? Deh. And that's give me this. And that's different things for different people. So basically here it's referring to the desires that we have inside of us, the deep ingrained desires that we have inside of us. And a part of that law, that divine law, is that Datar is the giver. What that giver does is, within this divine law, Dat Kare gives, dependent on what our desires are. So it's just the natural law of how it works. And sometimes we can't always see that. Yeah, and we don't always see that actually what's come into my life is based on my own inner desires, not realizing that some of these desires have been carried over from our last lives as well. And then we're trying to make sense of, like, how am I here? What am I doing? And even certain situations we end up in this life, we end up with certain people in this life. We don't realize that why are we sitting, why have I ended up here? Because often it's because of certain thoughts that we have, certain beliefs that we have inside of us. We end up in certain situations. And because that's just the way that kind of law works. And I know it can get more complicated than that, because we're thinking, well, we didn't really choose our family. We didn't choose them consciously. That's for sure. But it doesn't mean our own energy that we created from our thoughts and our emotions and our actions and our deep inner desires that we had, they almost create like a fragrance that attract certain situations or certain places, certain people. So in that sense, no, we didn't choose them consciously, but in some way they've been chosen because of what's going on inside of us. But if somebody had asked us consciously, would you like to come here? Most people would then say yes, or maybe, or no. You know, like it could be a yes, it could be a no. For some people would be like, actually, no, I wouldn't come here into this situation. But it doesn't mean that our own self, what was going inside, didn't play a part in us getting there. Can we then, is it about blaming ourselves for that? No, it's just understanding how that game works. It's not about blame, because we didn't actively choose it. Does that make sense? Yeah. Good. Akheh Mangeh deh daat kare daatar. So for everything, if the giver is that one, and the one that has set that law for how things play out and where we end up and what we end up getting, so then what is it that we can give that one? That's the question that comes from here. So Guru Nanak Dev Ji is saying now, Fer Ki Agai Rakheeai. So again, if we look at, we like to do a bit of Santhya in these sessions as well. just to, because the kakke no se hariya. And often it can be hard we end up saying that as a lam. A lot of people will say ke. But to get that right, what you want to do is on your fer, make your lam longer. So, and it actually then becomes, and you pose it as a question, and then you say Fer Ki Agai Rakheeai. And that becomes a question then. And what the question is here is Fer Ki Agai Rakheeai, then what? Then what is it that we can place before that one? Jit Disa Darbar. Where I can see you, Darbar literally translates to court, but what we're saying here is that I can experience you, because there's not like a literal court that you walk into. So what ਆਪਾਂ ਦੇਖ ਹੀ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਜੇ ਹੈ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਾਡਾ ਕੁਛ there's nothing that is ours ਮੇਰਾ ਮੁਝ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਛ ਨਹੀਂ ਜੋ ਕਿਛ ਹੈ ਸੋ ਤੇਰਾ Bhagt Kabir ji saying that actually nothing belongs to me ਮੇਰਾ ਮੁਝ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਛ ਨਹੀਂ ਜੋ ਕਿਛ ਹੈ ਸੋ ਤੇਰਾ. This is actually this avastha who realizes this is when we're entering that chautha pad, that realization tera tujhko saumpte kya lagay mera, that actually I'm just giving back already what is yours. So from that place, when you start realizing this and you want to really experience God, is you're asking now that question, Fer Ki Agai Rakheeai jit dise darbar. Then the question is Mohu Ki Bolan Boleeai. Again, it's a kanoda here, so I know about Mohu bolna hai. So it's Mohu Ki, again, same thing. The Ki is the question, makes it into that question. What? Mohu Ki Bolan Boleeai. So what is it that we can speak? What words can we speak so that jit sun, jada o sune, that one listens, jit sun tare pyar. Tare means to bring on, to take on. Pyar, love for us. I'll tell you the counter question that we've had in the past for this is, does that mean then God doesn't love us otherwise? Anyway, I thought God is just love. Then I don't get it. Why do we have to do something to make God love us then? Does that mean there's a point where God doesn't love or God isn't love? So even though, remember, this is language and Guru Nanak Dev Ji is trying to create this relationship eventually for us to fall and experience that one where we just... But before we get there, it's so difficult for us to talk in that way of oneness. And even though a lot of people try and talk of it now without being there, and that can actually make things very complicated. So actually what it's saying is, Jit sunatar hai pyar. Not that God isn't love and God has to change from being something to something else, but for how can we experience God's love? Because just because God is love, it doesn't mean we're experiencing God's love in this moment. And it means that we have to do something to be able to experience that love. To experience God's love, we've got to experience that very same love inside of us. It's not, again, it's not duality where I'm sitting here and I'm going to feel that you love me, but I'm going to feel that love inside of me. And that is going to be then the experience of God's love.
Isn't love a human emotion?
Yeah, so this is why it's so important to define here in which context are we talking about love. So if we talk about it in the context of a human love, everyone will have their own explanation towards it. It will be similar and they will just have these slight variations to it. So if you was to explain what love feels like or means to you, how would you describe it? Now you're going to kick yourself for asking me that question because there's another question that's come back to you. Have you thought about it, trying to describe it within yourself? How do you even know if you're feeling love? So you know when you've told somebody that you love them, what is that based on?
A feeling.
Yeah.
That you would do something for them, anything for them. You're a sacrifice, you're committed, you'd put them before yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's that feeling, isn't it? It's this. And for me, I would say it's just this overwhelming feeling of warmth.
Mm.
And the way I've written this article on this, and the way I've kind of explained it in there is that sometimes there's something within somebody else that allows you to get in touch with your emotion of love. Right? It's something there, and it sparks that experience of love inside of you. And when you experience that in that moment, that love is just it's very pure and it's very warm. That feeling and experience is. And in that moment, you're not thinking from the perspective of ego. There's no like, what about me? There's just no what about me. It's just you. It's just literally like in that moment, it's just tum karta, tum hua, mujh mein hai, raha na hu. And that's that experience. Does it mean we feel like that all the time for that person? It may be in the background, but there's loads of things that come up on the surface that block that. Where selfishness does take over at times. Where not only do you experience the emotion of love, where at times something about them actually sparks off the emotion of anger inside of you as well. And so there's so many things that come up in there. And that's how I would explain it to be a human emotion, which from my personal contemplation, I say that the purity of that emotion, when we're feeling that warmth, there's no ego, there's no you and me, there's just you. And when we're in it like that, then I feel that is an experience of that, of divinity, of that divine. And it's not like God's got loads of different parts to God. Like when you touch God, when you're in the experience of God, it's not that sometimes you're this, sometimes you're that. It's everything in one. So in that moment, it's bliss. In that moment, it's love. In that moment, that compassion. It's everything in one in that moment. And so there's times we can say this, that at its purest, even when somebody else takes you to that place, then that love is God. We've gone beyond ego. So it is the same then as that one. It's not a different type of love then. So when we say then a human emotion, again, I feel that a human emotion comes from God when we're the pure sense of God, where there's no resistance by the ego. But all it is, we keep falling in and out of it. We're not in it all the time. Our ego creeps back in. So the truth is, it's not like I love you, not sure about you, hate you. It doesn't actually mean that. Most of the time, the people that we would do anything for, because there's an element of attachment there. And I'm not saying here that attachment being in a negative way, but there's some sort of attachment there. But when we talk about the love is when there's something about them that allows us to go to that place within us. But like I said, when we use the sieve, you'll find a lot of other things within that, what we're trying to describe as love. Be a lot of attachment in there too, which isn't necessarily that pure pureness doesn't mean we don't experience that pure as well. So Mohu Ki Bolan Boleeai jit sun tare pyar. So what is it that we can do where we start to now experience that love of God? And Guru Nanak Dev Ji says, well, there is something you can do, and that is Amrit Vela Sach Naao. If you wake up early hours of the morning, and again, we could say that, well, couldn't this possibly happen outside of those hours? It could. But there's a lot of reasons to why Guru Nanak Dev Ji has said Amrit Vela here, because there's more of an opportunity. There's more of a chance at that time. Even if you look at scientifically, when the sun has risen and it's out in its full stride, then naturally cortisol is released in our body. But cortisol is the same chemical that is released when we are stressed, but just at a lower level. Why is that released at that time? Is because it gets our body ready to do things. It gets our body ready to get ready for the day, to go and survive. Yeah? Because it helps you to remain in that survival mode, not in a negative way, just to be able to get things done. Yeah, you've needed that. You've needed that spike of cortisol in the morning to get here, to sit down and set all this amazing equipment up. Without that, you would have struggled. You'd still just be feeling sleepy. And the Guru knows all of this. Today, the studies have been done to tell us this, but the Guru knows this. That if you beat that time before the sun comes out, you've got more of an opportunity where you're not fully awake and ready, but now you're not asleep as well. You're kind of in that in-between, and there's loads of scientific kind of terminologies for this as well. But we're not going to go down that direction, and because it's not a neuroscience episode. But where you've got that opportunity to go beyond then just the experience of your body and your memory. So if somebody is generally anxious in their life, their anxious feeling potentially, when that cortisol is released, will feel a bit accelerated and more. That's why some people have anxiety more in the morning. But if you can beat that before the sun comes out, that's why Guru Nanak Dev Ji is saying to us, Amrit Vela, and so many other reasons too, as we know, just like the common sense of so much less going on, you know, the energy that is right up there in the day when everybody's trying to hustle, bustle, make money, doing everything with phone calls, coming in, like your messages are going crazy. And then, so you've got, you know, you haven't got all of that energy as well at that time. Amrit Vela Sach Naao. But what is it that Guru Sahib Ji is saying for us to do during that time is Sach Naao, is connect to the name of Sach, of that one that is the truth. What does that mean? That would mean then, okay, what do I identify as? I've got so many different identities that we've gone through in the Mool Mantar, and those identities is the work that I'm doing now as a speaker, the identity of being a father, identity of being, you know, a son. These are all different identities of being a certain color, being identified with a certain faith and religion. But Amrit Vela, Guru Sahib Ji says, I don't want you to be attached or focused on those identities now. I want you to now focus on Sach Naao. That means you have to strip all those identities away. And it's easier to do during Amrit Vela, during those hours before dawn. And where you can sit down and you can meditate on, so what is the truth? That these identities aren't the truth. There was a time they appeared, they didn't exist. They're fleeting now as well. I might stop being a dad because something could happen to my children. Yeah, like what is my truth then? And is this all I am? And now that gives you that moment, that opportunity to connect to Saachaa now, where it's the absolute truth in the morning. And what do you do as you're connecting to that absolute truth? You Vaheguru vichar. You deeply contemplate vichar here, deeply contemplate, we can translate that to Vaheguru, the greatness of that one. Imagine starting your day off like that. Just because we wake up in the morning and somebody reads the Guru's words doesn't necessarily mean they are getting the fruits of contemplating that one's greatness unless you're contemplating that one's greatness. For example, you could read a line from Gurbani, and whilst you read that line from Gurbani, you're not connected to it. And within there, Guru Nanak Dev Ji or Gurbani is saying how that one is so amazing. And we could just, let's pick something. Maybe let's go to the Vismad body of Asadivar, because again, Asadivar is a Bani that is read or sang during Amrit Vela. Let's go to the next Pankti, Vismad Ji, Vismad Bed. Like, if you looked at this now, let's just look at this Vismad Ji. Ji means, so let's just translate here. Let's not get all complicated. Nice and simple. Ji to be different creatures and species. Let's say Ji here is all the animals, all the human beings. And you're just like, you're in awe. Vismad. You're just wonderstruck. And how amazing is that one that's created all these different creatures and species, instead of doing what? I can't believe that person said this to me. I can't believe how much hatred that person's got within them. But instead you're starting the day with, wow. You're saying Vismad. I'm in awe, I'm wonderstruck that, gee, look at all these different creatures. Vismad Bed, look at how Bed means the different species. Like, it's like, how boring would it have been? Like, nowadays, people still turn around and say, oh, I'm bored. Guru Nanak Dev Ji is saying, like, look how many different species there are. How can you get bored just looking? Just go into your garden and look at different insects and all these different things that are going on. Look at the different plants. And then saying Vismad Roop, Vismad Rang, like, look at these. I'm in awe of all these different colors. I'm in awe of this, of the beauty and the form of that one. And now what you're doing is you're starting your day off with Vaheguru vichar. You're starting your day off with the singing the greatness of that one. And that's, you can sing it out loud. You can use a stringed instrument to sing it. You can use whatever instrument, or you just use the instrument of your voice. Or you could even just contemplate it deeply within your own mind. Yeah. But it's about contemplating that, because somebody could be singing, sat even in the right place, in a Gurdwara, with the instruments that the Gurus have prescribed for us to use, but they're not actually doing Vaheguru, because they're not actually saying those words. When they're not saying, Tu beant ko berlo jane, that you are beant, and you are limitless. And there's only so few that actually know you, that know this. Uj apar beant swami. So what we're saying is, instead of in the morning thinking about marge lot gaye, oh my God, how bad things are, you're saying, like, imagine you start off your day like this. We talk about mindset. We talk about how do we shift from certain things like Guru Sahib Ji's given us. And I often think about myself, when I get down, when I experience feeling low, I'm obviously not doing this then. I'm obviously not. And if you start your day like that, you will continue your day like that. Because I often think that, when is it that I blame other people? When is it that I point a finger on somebody else for my own failings, or when something's not going great in my life, and start looking down at other people? When does that happen? Is myself, when I'm not then singing the praises of that one, But if you start your day like this, but you can't just be lip service. It can't just be you've sang the Guru's words. Yeah, the Guru's sang the greatness. Are you saying it? You've got to say it to get the fal, to get the fruits. You've got to feel that. Yeah. If you don't feel God being great, then you've not sang the greatness, the glory of that one. Yeah. And sometimes that's difficult to digest for people. But if we don't speak about this, and then I think we're setting ourselves up to fail, because then we're leaving people to say, no, koi nahi, like, but as long as you've said it, as long as you did your Gurbani, that's one step, yes. But then why are then people still sometimes feeling just dead? Why are they still feeling so low? Because what was prescribed by the Guru, Amrit Vela Sach Naao vichar, wasn't done. When you feel that about God in the morning, it's like, wow. When you're in that wow, then what happens? Karmee Aavai Kaprraa. Then Karmee here from the Arabic word bakshish. And we can even use it as action. Both work here, because it doesn't matter. We can either refer it back to the action that was done, which was the Vadeeai vichar. So the meditating on the one and singing the glory and the greatness of that one, through that action, or we can say, because of that action was done, then the karmi, then the kirpa, then the grace flows through, and what do we get? Aavai Kaprraa. Then we get some clothes. That makes sense? Which kapra? Prem patola tੈ ਸ਼ਹਿ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਢਾਕਣ ਕੂ ਪਤ ਮੇਰੀ. Then you get the patola here is referring to clothes. Patola meaning silk clothes. But what clothes here? Prem patola. Tੈ ਸ਼ਹਿ ਦਿੱਤਾ. Sheh is referring to God in the context of God being our husband as being brides. Saying then our husband, Vaheguru God, gave us what? Prem. Then we got prem. The bakshish, Karmee Aavai Kaprraa. Through what? How? Vadeeai vichar. That Saachaa now, we're connected to that one's name, not my ego, main kita. You don't want to wake up in the morning and start going through, I'm amazing. I did this. You know, I'm such, like, that's not how we start our day. We start our day with like, wow, you are this, you are that, to that one. And then then Karmee Aavai Kaprraa, then we've got the cloth, the clothes of love. We're experiencing now that question, Jit sun tare pyar, now it's come to us. See how this all lines up and how it works. Often when we look at this, we'd think, oh, that's separate and that's separate. It's actually not. They all work together. And then what happens? Nadri mokh dwar. What it's saying here is that then through the nadar, again, through the grace of that one, through the glance of that one, and what happens? Mokh dwar, we experience, it leads us through the door of liberation. But what is it that liberates us? This isn't, again, separate, remember. What is it that liberates us? Jinke pande pao tina savarsi. Maharaj here, Guru Nanak Dev Ji saying, those that have love in the vessel of this mind, or the body, however you want to translate it, tina savarsi, they become beautiful. And then Sukhi kare pasao. Pasao here again means kirpa. Sukhi kare pasao. Through the kirpa, the pasao, through the grace of love, then we get sukhi, we get to experience true happiness. Dukh visarsi, it takes away our suffering. Sahasa mule nahe, Maharaj says sahasa means doubt, mule means at all, don't have any doubt at all. Yes, mule can mean root as well, but here in this context, mule means at all. Sahasa mule nahe. Don't have any doubt at all, sarpartarsi, it will save you. What will? Love will. So now all this makes sense. Jit sun tare pyar, Amrit Vela Sach Naao Vadeeai vichar, Karmee Aavai Kaprraa. The kapra, now I've got the cloth of love. That cloth of love is what is going to save me. Because in love, there is no ego. In love, you treat everybody the same equally, just like God does. You don't think this is my wife, that's my child, that's yours, that's mine. That doesn't exist anymore. So the love as we know it, like I said, isn't actually in its purest form as we know it. Nadri mok dwar. Mok means liberated. Because when you're in love, when you actually experience love, there's no ego. And that means you're liberated. Where there's no attachment and it's just pure, then you're liberated. When there's no, that's mine, that's not mine, you're liberated. When you're actually experiencing that oneness, is that love that it's talking about here. The love here is talking about experiencing oneness. Like there is only that one that is left. And as again Guru Nanak Dev Ji Shabad saying, dekha tum hai, tujhte niksi foot mara. Then Guru Nanak Dev Ji, in the last pankti of this paudi, Guru Nanak Dev Ji says, Nanak, Evai Jaaneeai, sab ape Saachaa. Guru Nanak Dev Ji saying here, Evai Jaaneeai, know this to be true, that sab ape Saachaa, that one, sab is everything. That one is, that Saachaa, that truth, what is true? What is true? That one is everything. That's the truth. This isn't separate, this Mangti. What it's saying is, Evai Jaaneeai, the Antariv Arth, to the deeper meaning of that, Evai Jaaneeai is now you know this, that everything is the truth when you experience love. You actually now know that even the leaf is just a manifestation of that one, and even this body is a manifestation of that one. We are all from that one. Actually, there's nothing but that one. And then you start to treat everything from that place of love, of being that one. The way you even look at a tree then, the way you even look at a leaf then, the way you even look at water, that very water that you're going to drink, there's love in everything now. How do you know somebody's truly in love? Just look at the way they eat their food. Look at the way they drink their water. Look at the way they treat everything and everyone. It'll be with ek nadar. It'll be with one vision, not two. It won't be loving towards that person and not towards that person. And just because externally sometimes you have to be a certain way with some different people because of the way they are, it doesn't mean you're altered from inside. You're in constant love. And then you know, Sab Ape Saachaa, that one Saachaa is actually everything. You can see it now. That's what love is, accordingly to Guru Nanak Dev Ji. Love could be something accordingly to someone else. That's what love is to Guru Nanak Dev Ji. When you see that one in everything, and you know that one is everything, that is love. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share and subscribe. Please donate and help spread Guruji's message. Link is in the description below. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.